Hello. In 1994, the Duke of Devonshire commissioned a special work to be composed to celebrate a massive occasion at Chatsworth. The celebration was not as we lesser mortals would celebrate a birthday, and not a wedding anniversary, and not a special engagement or a coming of age. It was 300 years of the Dukedom. Very few of us are in a position to be able to celebrate that. And I was lucky enough to be invited to be one of the people to help make this celebration work. First of all, a pageant was written. Well, I would have called it a pageant, but the chap who wrote it called it a masque. And it was the story of the Devonshire family from the point where they were ennobled as the Dukes of Devonshire to the present day. They were granted this great honour by way of a thank you for helping get William and Mary safely and peacefully onto the throne of this country when we unfortunately ran out of monarchs. Everybody was gathered together for a preliminary meeting at Chatsworth, and everybody was a lot of people. There were at least 250 performers, and not to mention all of the technicians and other help that was involved. The chap in overall charge was one Freddie Mennell, of the Mennell Hunt family. A small, wiry man, looked and built like a jockey, who, to my recollection, always wore jodhpurs and riding boots and carried in one hand a telephone about the size of a brick and in the other a riding crop. He was mercurial and ubiquitous, and he needed to be to keep all of that lot in order. There was a miracle. For a whole week in May in Derbyshire it didn't rain. It was pretty chilly, but it didn't rain. I remember driving into the parkland on that first day, and I could see in the distance what looked like a little red Lego structure, and I realised that it was the stand for the audience. And I thought, well, there won't get many people in that, until I got near it, and it was huge, enough to accommodate the size of audience anticipated, something around 3,000. It was the vastness of the Chatsworth Park that had diminished the structure into appearing like a toy when first seen as I came in. Well, the plan was that the masque would consist of various scenes where each scene represented the life of a particular duke, and the dukes were all professional actors. My duke was the 9th Duke, and my duke's interest in life was gambling and racing, and special music had been composed for the whole event, and the music that I was going to use was very lively and very cheerful, and it was great fun putting together a dance drama to give an impression of the race goers and the jockeys and the excitement of a big racing event. When it came to the first night audience was made up entirely of friends and relations of the cast. In a sense, that first night was a dress rehearsal. Then the next night would be devoted to being a thank you to all of the servants and retainers of the Devonshire households who previously and in present, from both Derbyshire and London and their estates in the West Country. And then the third night, a fee-paying audience, and the tickets were pretty hefty, with all of the money going to the Children's Society charity. The first night went amazingly well. The audience filled the tiers of the seating, and they were thrilled to see a very large barge, decked about like a royal barge, with oarsmen in livery and a boatman standing at the prow, and at the back, at the stern, the figures in regal arraignment of William and Mary. And on the side of the newly made prop quay were all of the Dukes of Devonshire in a tableau, waiting to greet the new monarchs when they arrived, and to swear allegiance of the Dukes of Devonshire to the people of England, and in particularly Derbyshire. So the boat comes along, and the boatmaster gives the signal for the oarsmen to loft their oars, which they do. That means put their oars vertical, which means they all get very splattered with water that the oars bring up, and have to pretend that that hasn't happened and maintain total dignity. And then the oarsman slings his hook, which is a phrase I'm sure you're familiar with, and hooks it onto something on the quayside and gently pulls the barge into the quay so that the royal couple can alight. Well, that's what should have happened, and that's what did happen. And then the boat rowed further along out of the lake, and the whole of the event could continue. If you have been involved in theatrical things yourself, you will know that the dress rehearsal isn't always absolutely ready for the perfection of performance. And our dress rehearsal was no different. Between the evening of the rehearsal and the evening of the first night, the set designers had very carefully turned the scaffolding quayside into something that looked remarkably similar to the stone of Chatsworth. Very impressive. And nobody appreciated at first the significance of this. So the music starts, and the oarsmen start to row, and the audience claps in happy anticipation, and the boat comes into view, and the boat gets level with the quayside, and the oarsman is about to sling his hook, and there is nothing whatsoever to hook his hook into, because the scaffolding is all covered by the fake stone. And because a river flows through the lake at Chatsworth, it has tides and a direction and a stream, and so the boat doesn't stop at the quayside even though the men aren't rowing, and continues happily on its way. So William and Mary can't get off, so there won't be a pageant. But my Duke, the 9th Duke, standing there in splendid state in his fine outfit, was wide awake, saw that was what was happening, and dashed down towards the barge, and managed to get hold of the boatman's hook, and the other dukes by then had woken up and joined in, and the boat was heaved into place just before it went right past the quay, and William and Mary, in something of a flurry, were able to alight, and so we were able to continue. But all the music was pre-recorded, and we were very behindhand with the music. And you know what it's like if you watch something on film or television when the lips aren't synchronised with the sound. it drives one round the bend. And it was several items later, I'm pleased to say it was the item where my dance happened, before everything got back into sync. Because I was able to get to my team and to say to them, when you go on to perform, start the dance from wherever the music has got to, not necessarily the beginning of what we have learned and rehearsed. And I had some good enough dancers to do that, and the rest of the company followed suit, and from there on in, things went smoothly. There was another little quirk. At the end of each evening, Bess of Hardwick appeared on the flat roof of Chatsworth and declaimed across the land a request that the family, the Devonshire family, would continue to be loyal in their support of England and particularly their county. And Bess of Hardwick was pregnant, and by the time it got to the show, very pregnant. But the wardrobe mistress had an excellent solution, which I share with you, just in case it's ever useful, and it was that since Bess of Hardwick was in Elizabethan gear, providing the ruff that she wore round her neck was bigger in diameter than the size of the bump, no one would ever notice. And so it was. We got through a whole week. The audiences were splendid. On the last night, you could divide the audience into two parts, the part that were the great and good of Derbyshire and the part that were there representing corporate interests, because the first part were all bedecked in oilskins and sensible shoes, and the other guests had come in Gucci suits and pashminas and were quietly freezing. When it was all over, I walked back to the dressing rooms with my Duke and a couple of the other actors. The very last part of the mask was that a giant arm appeared up from the waters of the lake, and a voice declaimed across the parkland a promise that the Devonshires would serve Derbyshire in the future as they had in the past. The other actor said to my Duke, "Was that actor Sindon at the end?" And my Duke wearily said, "Yes, it was." And then the first Duke said, "Was he pissed? He sounded pissed." And my Duke said, "Yes, he was." And that was the final moment of my week celebrating 300 years of the Dukedom. Bye-bye.